Welcome back to the second week of your course. This week we'll talk about the Internet and the online world. Let's get started. If you are listening to this lecture, you are using the Internet. The Internet was invented around 30 years ago so that the U.S. Department of Defense could communicate with universities and other defense contractors. These organizations were located in different parts of the country and needed a common place to discuss projects. Their idea was to utilize telephone lines to carry messages in case of a natural disaster or nuclear attack. And if one of the organizations was destroyed, the others could still communicate. Interesting, isn't it? Originally, there were just a few users, but once the Internet started working, lots of other people wanted to jump in, and the Internet grew very quickly. The number of users is now in the millions in the United States, and billions when you count other countries. The Internet is used for some pretty important things. Think of the things you can do online. Send and receive email, read news, send large files, chat, instant message, order clothes or books, or just about anything at all, or just surf around. I've spent hours clicking on different links for more information, shopping, reading articles, checking weather, watching music videos, and helping my children find pictures for their homework. All of these things are possible because the Internet uses a system which allows you to view a document and link to other pages by using an address. This is called a hyperlink. Each page has its own address, which is called a Uniform Resource Locator, URL. You can think of this system the way you think of mailing letters to addresses, where each location has its own number, street, and city, but in this case the address is somewhere on the Internet. The web was not nearly as exciting before web browsers entered the scene. Browsers are things like Netscape, Internet Explorer, and Firefox. These browsers process Internet language and then show it to you in a useful way. Remember last week we talked about computers converting and displaying information through processes? Well, this is a great example of that. The browser converts computer codes and, like magic, you have a web page to look at instead of lines of code. You'll see an example of that later in this course. Here's a word you might have heard used as it relates to the Internet: navigation. This term is a fancy term used to describe moving around on the web. Let's talk more about those methods. For example, you are probably familiar with the back button, which lets you see the page you viewed just before the one you're looking at. And maybe you've used bookmarks? The bookmark is a way to save your place and return later to the exact page you're looking at. These features are common no matter which browser you are using. Ever done a search on the Internet? If you have, you probably did that by using what's called a search engine. One of the many great things about the web is that you can search for information because there's so much out there. Let's say you want a recipe for asparagus chicken. By going to www.google.com, you can type in asparagus chicken, click search, and you'll get a list of Internet websites that have asparagus chicken recipes. Lots of businesses use search features to learn more about their competitors, or to find the lowest price on office supplies, or to find out what their competitors are advertising. There are endless reasons to search the Internet for information. In what ways have you used searches? In order to use the Internet, you must first have the right kind of connection. Most businesses use both wires and wireless methods to connect their employees. If you have small connection wires that look like phone cords that plug into a wall, you probably have a wired connection. If you have a wireless connection, you probably have a router and modem, and you can take your computer anywhere nearby without having wires connected in the back. There are several Internet service providers, or ISPs, who offer connectivity. Companies like AT&T, Comcast, or a local company where you live. Generally, the higher the speed of the Internet connection, the better it is for the user. Who wants to wait while an email is sent? If your connection is slow, you will have to wait for larger-sized messages to be sent. For example, if a message contains photos of your children, it might take a few minutes to load. Photos are large files because they use lots of little dots and colors, which is a lot of information for your computer to carry around. There is another Internet connection called a satellite service. These services are for people who are not using a home phone, but who are using a cell phone, so their Internet connection is wireless through their cell phone satellite. Picture one of those large satellite dishes sending signals around the globe. That comes in handy when, for example, a police officer pulls over a driver. The officer wants to check the license and license plate against a database, but isn't in the office. So the satellite connects the officer to the database to check for any criminal history. Satellite connections are useful when you are away from home, but a more reliable connection is at home with your Internet provider. Remember when I talked about shopping on the Internet? Well, the proper name for that is e-commerce. This refers to businesses that sell products over the Internet. I'm sure you've heard of Amazon.com, right? And eBay? These are examples of online businesses. Online businesses are busier during the holidays because lots of people are shopping. Consumers can even ship purchases directly so that a present arrives wrapped and on time. This is done all without waiting in long lines at the post office. You can pay for products online using your credit card, contact customer service for assistance, check for return and shipping policies, and never need to leave your home. For this reason, e-commerce is getting more and more popular. Speaking of not leaving your home, what about trying online banking? You can use a bank's website to create an account, transfer funds, view transactions, reconcile your bank statement, and even pay bills. You can even tell your bank that on the 15th of every month, you'd like them to take $100 from your checking account and send it to Shell Oil Company to pay for your gas. Businesses do this sort of automatic bill paying all the time. Company A might send Company B money to buy office supplies. Or a bank might request credit information from a credit reporting agency. Businesses are doing these kinds of online transactions more and more, and they're using the Internet. But is all of this money moving around between accounts safe? Do you feel secure asking your bank to automatically pay Shell Oil Company without needing any approval from you? What if someone logged on as you and changed your Shell Oil Company payment to $1,000 per month? How would you know? Because of the amount of business being conducted over the Internet, websites have begun to use something called encryption. Encryption scrambles computer instructions so they are unreadable without a password. You know if encryption is being used on a website because the URL begins with HTTPS rather than the normal HTTP. These websites are often referred to as secure websites. Now we get to my favorite part of the Internet, email. If you want to keep in touch with people, here's a great way. This is like writing and sending letters to people without using the post office. If someone has access to the Internet, and most people in this country do, you can communicate with them. The E in email means electronic. So think of a letter flying through the universe and landing at your friend's house. That letter gets there in a fraction of the time, sometimes seconds, and they can reply to you just as quickly. Sometimes people use email through their browser, or they have their own email application like Microsoft Outlook. And remember we were discussing addresses? Well, the same idea for email. Someone's email address might be joan@yahoo.com, which means that your friend Joan has an account on Yahoo. Email addresses always have an @ sign, so the Internet knows where Joan is at. Almost all businesses use email to communicate at work. Usually there is a technical expert in your office who sets this up for you, so that when you sit down to use email, it works without you having to figure out much of the complicated configuration part. If your name is Carol, and your company is called ABC Plumbing, your email address might be this: carol@abcplumbing.com. Company email addresses try to follow a logical structure of first name, then company name, or something similar, depending on the size of the company. Having and using work email is handy because you can send documents or messages to coworkers, or email your boss a web address that discusses raises. That wraps up the second week of this course. See you next week when we cover interacting with your computer. Thanks for your attention.